or even just talking right next to them and say, oh, the teacher's right next to me. I have to make sure I can't be playing with this or that. So, you kind of use both strategies, putting students in certain spaces, but also putting yourself in those spaces, very frequently.
And I feel like it's because it's a small group that in my head I'm like, okay, well, I'm in the front. And that's why I guess in the video I'm like, it's a small group. And usually, like last year, and I did move around during their small group, but again, it's smaller, so I could see them from there. But this time, I was like, wow, like the fact that he was right in front of the camera and I really didn't catch it because I was so focused on getting Axel to focus, because it took him a while to focus. It did take him a while. He was like here, he was there. I'm like, Axel. And then, I got a little more firm towards the end, but either way, if with him, firmness doesn't really, it's more praise and more like participation points for him that would really helps him. But again, because it's a small group, I guess my mentality was, okay, I could see him. Clearly I couldn't, because when I have my full class, when I go into the in-out class, I'm always moving, I'm always looking, always like here, there, squatting, everywhere, like, so here I guess it was just like, oh, it's a small group, okay, but I would move, but not as often. But definitely after seeing the video, I'm like, oh yeah, definitely have to be here, there, for sure.
Oh, great to hear that you're doing it already in the other context. That's great. So how did the lesson go in terms of your objectives? Do you have anything that they worked on that you can say, look, my students were able to produce this? How did they do in terms of the work that you want them to produce?
I took pictures of them, but since I'm here, I actually have the pictures right here. The work.
Oh, good.
1 second. Okay, so sorry, my stuff is all over that. So, and what I remember last year, what I had done is had them draw pictures, but I think this time it was a lot easier for them, since I was focusing on sentences, having them paste it. So the same cards they used, I taped myself on it. They just had to place it on the correct box. So I know Ivana, now I can push her from what I learned from this lesson and what we're going to do is focus on action words themselves. So again, because of scheduling, I had to move my lessons around. So I wasn't able to go over action words explicitly. So now the next lesson would be, because today what I do with them, my scheduling is phonics and then trying again HMH, depending on if they don't put me to cover, things like that. So what I learned from Ivana's work is, okay, she was able to write complete sentence, the penguin. When she said it verbally though, she said the penguin sleep, so she didn't add that the penguin sleeps. So again, that can be maybe a grammatical component that we can go over, and just in terms of action words too, because she was still a little confused on the term action words. She's like, what are action words? I'm like, you know what? I'm like, very good question, Ivana. That's something that I would have loved to go over with them before this lesson. That was part of my the unit segment I had planned, but again, I had to move things around. So now Liam, I don't know if you saw, he chose 2 pictures of animals. So he wasn't able to choose the who and doing what. He wasn't able to make that connection. And what I realized as well with him, and I knew, because this is something I usually do on my own, but again, in terms of planning, I should have had maybe just I wanted to I knew he would struggle. I knew it, but I thought it would be more of a productive struggle. But it was more, it really was something that at this point, I should have just had him trace. Because he was just drawing on the word subject, and he didn't write a sentence at all. So, yeah, he wasn't even able to match it. So that's something where I'm trying to figure out, and I'm still talking to his teachers, what they do. They say even with 1-to-1, it's very difficult. We're talking to mom and seeing, how we can because he has an IP and we're still in that, that area. When we've come to the conclusion, it's not language for him. It's more than that. So I'm trying to learn a little more on how I can support him. With Joseph, he did great. The dog eat, but now again, and for them, I pushed them by having them. Give me 1 sec. By having them circle the action and then underline the who. That was in order to see whether they completely understood it. So Ivana was the only student who was able to circle the action and underline the who. Here, Joseph circled the who, and then he highlighted, for action, he highlighted exclamation marks. So again, he was able to provide a sentence, the dog, but again, the dog eats. He didn't say the dog eats. So that's another student I can push, and definitely would have to review. Okay, now that you wrote the sentence, maybe go back and see if you can identify the who and the what. Maybe go backwards this time. So Kiara wrote the cat, dog, run. So here we need sight words, the cat and dog. I did provide the sight word and, because I wanted to challenge them by, okay, now that you wrote this, maybe you can tell me another action, or two subjects. And she wrote the cat and dog, but she put run. Again, nose, the cat and dog, run, and then no punctuation, but that was just, okay. And then Mia, a duck, swim. And she wrote, I didn't get to ask her what she wrote here, a duck, swim, ash. I think she meant, she did tell me, I think she copied the word action. So a duck, swim. And then she circled the who instead of circling the action. So a duck, swim. And again, no, a duck swims. So, and then this was Emily, Emily is just in terms of, it's verbal, but she's very proficient in writing. She copies, she'll smile if she agrees with me, and then if she doesn't agree. So that's how I get my answer. So she wrote capital letter, the butterfly can fly, exclamation mark. On her, the butterfly, and she circled the who though. So again, we would have to go back and work on identifying the subject and the action. And then I think it was Axel where's Axel's work here? Joseph, Kiara, Mia. I think it's over there. It fell somewhere. So Axel was able to, and he wrote the fish play, but he just wrote the fish because he wanted to talk about the fish. And I was like, oh, fish can play? And he explained, so I wanted to make sure he made that connection. He was able to make, because he's like, yeah, I have fish at home and they play in the house. I'm like, okay, excellent. So he was able to make that connection. Again, going back to content, he was able to make the connection with what the animal itself can do. But again, it needs support more in the sentence structure. So yeah, definitely Liam, who would need the support the most. But again, I think it's beside language, but I know Axel and Dylan are the ones who need some more in language itself. So those are students I can maybe push a little harder.
I mean, I think that that was very helpful to have you analyze all of that student data. And I agree with a lot of your points. I would encourage you, though, to kind of get to the root cause of what your students produced here, because I think that actually content objective-wise and language objective-wise, they did achieve those, right? Sentence structure, they have their subject and they have their predicate, or they have, subject and a verb. And I think that they did get that, but what are they missing? So you said that S, but what piece of grammatical knowledge does that refer to, or what category does that belong to? So then, it's not quite sentence structure, but what is it?
Wouldn't that be, I would think, grammar? Would we go back to plural or past, present tense? And because I know we were talking about, or what we've been saying with them, especially for HMH, the module assessments, they want to talk about when it's a plural noun, or that's what they've been, so we've been trying to go back to that. And even me, I'm trying to go, even myself, go back, okay, so how am I going to teach when we add the S and when we don't add the S? So, but before that, I would want to go over action words themselves. Yes, because even then, one of the HMH module assessment is adding ing, so they can even say the butterfly is flying, the butterfly flies. So that would be a whole lesson in itself.
Yeah, and so what I would recommend to you then is to, if you want students to be able to produce, for example, butterfly flies, or I already forget some of the other examples, but add that S to the verbs. Think about actually just giving them the verbs, right? So they have to choose from 5 verbs, and they have to choose from 5 animals, and it's their job to put the animal, the subject, in the right place in the sentence, and the verb in the right place in the sentence. But they don't have to know, okay, I have to add an S because this is a third person pronoun. They don't have to know that yet.
Perfect.
Right? So that's another kind of scaffold that you can put in place where you're still getting students to produce that target language, but they don't really have to know about this other grammar point yet. That'll be something that you teach, like you said, later on.
Right. Oh, and that's so good to know. And I was actually like trying my best, trying to figure that out because I'm like, well, first of all, these students are still even trying to write the word fly. So, and getting them to, conjugate it to flies, IES, change, we're not doing that in first grade. And, that's still, so I was definitely, I was struggling with, the format of how I would teach it. Like, okay, the steps, again, like my school's very lenient in the terms of how I go about teaching my pull-out lessons, as long as I connect it to HMH. So in that sense, it falls on me being able to know how to progress it, and of course you can use like TPT to help you out with in terms of, but at the end of the day, it's your students and you have to, build it around your students. So you can get as many TPT lessons as you can, but they're not, at the end of the day, they don't know your students. So that's what, it's been a little difficult in that sense, but that was great to hear. Thank you so much. Because that's definitely something I would want to try with them, and I will, like, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you've got such a good handle on so many different parts of the class, like classroom behavior, content management, having all these scaffolds, having all these models. I think as you go forward in your teaching career, think about kind of isolating what grammar or what language focus you have for that particular lesson, because sometimes as teachers, we get caught up in saying we want our students to be perfect, but sometimes it's okay for students to make mistakes that they haven't learned about yet.
Exactly.
Right? So, so keeping kind of a broad view of tense and aspect, grammar, all those other issues, that'll help you say, okay, this is what I need to give my students because they're not going to have any idea of how to do it. And that's okay, because what we're focusing now on is step 2, and we'll get to step 9, in a few weeks.
Exactly. No, that's perfect. And that's a great, because at the end of the day, you're right. They did reach the objective, but now it was just great data to see, okay, now how can we go forward from here? So it was good. It was great to see like Ivana, she understood it, and now, okay, what she needs is this, but again, at the end of the day, it is a whole group, so I can't move on until, we're all at that step. Well, of course you can differentiate, but realistically, right, we want them to reach the objective together.
Yes, yeah. So how do you feel, I do want to talk about kind of the whole semester and the program as well, because this is your last semester of being observed, is that right? Or do you got one more after?
I have no idea. So this was my last semester. I had 4 observations. Here this semester we only had 2. And next semester I don't know I think we're still doing, but I think it's our capstone proposal project. And I don't know if we still get observed for that, if we still have observations. I just know that's on the list for that. But in terms of, I said before, unfortunately it's been affecting like my professors, my schoolwork. I have just some personal issues going on, and then on top of that, like the scheduling in school hasn't been helping. So again, I apologize for that, and then we'll see how it goes from here. But definitely catching up now for the last 2 to 3 weeks that we have left.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how did you, just focusing on this semester in terms of your teaching and the observations, what are some things that you kind of identified, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, but what are some things that you want to keep doing in your teaching practice? And what are some areas that you were thinking about, I still want to work on that, or I want to look at other ways, maybe even talk to other colleagues or your classmates. So what are some kind of glows and grows that you've
for sure. Okay.
for yourself?
So for my grows, definitely I would want to focus more on taking the data in. Like, I know I was speaking to one of my coworkers as well, then she's like, I always forget to take the notes and stuff. She's like, they're here, but it's not here. And I had my whole list printed. I had the skill that we were working on, and it was right there on my desk, and I didn't use it. And then I was like, oh my God. And I realized after, and I'm like, so just taking the actual data, and then not only that, but then obviously using it, that's something I still, obviously in order for you to use it, you got to take it, so that's something I'm still working on, taking the data itself, not just here, but writing it down physically. And I also would want to focus in terms of my deeper meaning questions, how can I make sure that they comprehend it at the moment, definitely providing feedback at the moment. I think I was able to support them in terms of, when I realized that Liam was a question that maybe all of them might have, I was like, okay, let's pause and let's pivot and maybe go back, and we were able to go back together. So that was something I saw that was, we did well in that sense. But definitely, again, with the questions, I know in differentiation, I feel like I've been growing definitely from last semester in terms of being able to provide those scaffolds. But of course, I always feel like every time after a lesson, I'm like, oh, okay, I could have done this, I could have done that. So again, like with Liam, definitely, it was here, but I wouldn't provide him that support that he needed in terms of being able to trace, because he for sure needs to right now focus on tracing, because there's no he's not making that connection yet in terms of his letters. Mm-hmm. So just tracing for now, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And what about your glows? I mean, I feel like you kind of couched your glows and your grows. So tell me more things that you're proud of, that you'd show your
go-teachers. Definitely in differentiation, I think. Well, compared to last year, I think I've been able to learn more about my students. I know every year, obviously, every semester is different students, but able to provide and get to know your student. I feel like I'm very, and in terms of engagement, I've always said I love being on top of my class. I love saying, hey, I really don't raise my voice. It's something I like. I know when it's a bigger class, yes, okay, I have raised my voice before, but in terms of engagement, I feel like, of course, there's always room for improvement for that, but I really think I've seen the improvement, especially with this group. And especially even today, like they surprised me because I haven't seen them since Thanksgiving, because again, I had yesterday they had me covering. So I was like, oh, like happy Thanksgiving. Like I got to see them, and I don't know if it's because they missed me or something, but they were on it, like excellent. Now he's always like, but he always has to have his pointer. So I'm getting to know them, but definitely I've seen growth in them, and as well as myself, keeping them engaged.
Good. And I know that we only had 2 observations, but I also want to say that I echo, exactly what you said. I've seen growth too, and I think that your point about not having to raise your voice, I totally see that in your classroom. You got your pulse, you got your finger on the pulse of your classroom.
Yeah.
But you definitely are able to check with students, and even when you maybe miss one, like that one student who's in front of the camera, you are able to get them eventually. You do walk around the room, eventually you get to them. So I do think that you have a really good sense of how to connect with each one of your students. You seem to know what each one needs, what supports, and how is that support different from this other student. So it was really great to see in this observation and the last observation.
I'm glad. Thank you. I appreciate it.